Good afternoon. I'm calling to order the House Committee on Consumer Protection and Commerce. It is Thursday, March 16th, 2023, 2:30 p.m. We are in conference room 329. To get through all the testimony, we will be limiting testifiers to 2 minutes. For those who are on Zoom, please mute yourself and turn off your videos until it is your turn to testify. If you are experiencing technical difficulties, you could use the chat function to contact our IT staff and sort it out. If we have time, we will circle back to you. Okay, first on the agenda, we have SB 434 SD1 relating to insurance. First to testify on this measure, we have Gordon Ito, Insurance Commissioner from the DCCA, in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, member of the committee. I'm Gordon Ito testifying on behalf of DCCA. We are opposed to only Section 2 of the bill, and we have no objection to the remaining sections of the bill. Section 2 of this bill would amend, the HRS Chapter 431-19-108 by creating provisions to exempt captive insurance companies from certain examination requirements. This will dilute the regulatory standards of Hawaii captive insurance laws and may contribute to a negative perception of the state's regulatory standards. Hawaii benefits from attracting captive insurance companies that value strong regulatory oversight as opposed to captive insurance companies seeking less robust standards. I must add that Hawaii, we have pride ourselves as being one that has great regulatory oversight, we're viewed as prudent regulators. Over the last few years, some captive domiciles have been engaging in competition by reducing regulatory oversight in an attempt to attract captives. We do not want to engage in this race to the bottom with respect to regulatory oversight. Examinations of insurance companies allow the insurance division to assess a captive insurance company's internal controls, financial condition, ability to fulfill insurance regulation and obligation and compliance with the insurance laws. And that's why we're opposed to Section 2 of this bill. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Paul Shimomoto, President of the Hawaii Captive Insurance Council, in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Paul Shimomoto. I am President of the Hawaii Captive Insurance Council, a nonprofit organization whose membership is comprised of captive insurance company owners from across the globe and professional service providers who support those companies and Hawaii's $67 million captive industry. We generally stand on our written testimony in support of this bill as drafted. I would like to point out a couple of things. First, there's a suggestion that exempting certain captive insurance companies from examination would result in a race to the bottom. Actually, what this bill proposes to do is actually create a race to the top. It's quite the opposite. And the reason that is because only certain companies would be granted an exemption under discretion of the commissioner, provided that they're able to meet certain thresholds and prove that they basically have reached the gold standard to achieve that opportunity for exemption. So it's not a blanket opportunity for captives just simply not to be examined at all. In fact, they would have to apply, the commissioner would have discretion, and it really was intended to apply to those captives who have reached that gold standard. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we have had dialogue with the Commissioner's office. We, in fact, still have continuing dialogue, I hope, with respect to some hopefully mutually agreeable language on Section 2 of this bill. We appreciate the opportunity to further dialogue with the Commissioner's office to find common ground to push this bill forward, and particularly with regard to Section 2. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other persons here to testify on this measure? Seeing none, we have written testimony in support from Matthew Takamine from Brown & Brown, Jamie Asato, and William Baxley, Allison Lewis, Denise Straka, Matthew Reese, Jill Miura, Denise Kazama, Faye Okamoto, and Christina Kamaka. Members, are there any questions? Yes, please go ahead, Representative Onyeki.
Yes, Mr. Ito. So my reading of section 2 is that you do have discretion over whether or not to exempt a captive insurance company.
I mean, that's correct. But when you talked about gold standard, in terms of domiciles, Vermont is often, they promote themselves as being the gold standard. Hawaii has very similar laws to Vermont. Vermont is the largest U.S. domicile. They do not have this exemption. We want to maintain the requirements to do the examination, to maintain our standards and our reputation.
Well, again, my interpretation is that you decide whether or not the examination is necessary or not. But it's a 5-year exemption.
Yes, but that's correct. But also, I would also like to say that, I mean, commissioners come and go. And so, there may be other times when there may be commissioners that do not understand or fully comprehend what they're doing. And so that's part of my concern in terms of putting an exemption that allows a commissioner to waive it.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to the next measure. SB 855 SD1 relating to condominium reserve requirements. First to testify on this measure, actually, I'm sorry, we don't have anyone to testify on this measure scheduled. Are there any persons here to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing none, we'll be moving on to SB 1027 SD1 relating to combat sports. First to testify on this measure, we have Nadine Ando, Director of DCCA, in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Nadine Ando, Director of the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. We have submitted written testimony opposing this measure and stand on that written testimony that will be available for questioning.
Thank you. Next, we have Walter Carvalho, individual in support.
Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee, Walt Carvalho from Hilo, Hawaii. Speaking in behalf and support of the Combat Sports Commission that we have needed here in Hawaii for many years. Been in the business for 27 years here in Hawaii, 50 years total. And there's so many things that are going wrong. We have a temporary committee in place by the DCCA. It's just not doing the job. Can't get the big shows here. I work at all the big shows you see on TV, but we can't get them here because we don't have a commission. So basically, fighters that are world champions like Falanico Vitali and Yancy Medeiros and Max Holloway, they can't perform in front of their own hometown because we don't have a commission here. They won't come with a regulating committee of 2 people to regulate a big event where you need inspectors and people that are professional to make the thing run smoothly. And so with one amendment of having our own special fund for the commission, we don't have to bother the DCCA for any type of funding or expecting them to pay for full-time employees. Everybody's a voluntary employee on the commission and will only be paid upon the time that they work at these events, which is how the Professional Boxing Commission has ran here in Hawaii for years. Everybody's a volunteer. You only get paid when you work at the events. We have so many people here that are licensed and have fought for many years. They're so experienced in this background, but yet we have somebody trying to run the program who has no experience in it at all, and therefore we cannot get the big shows to come here. So I travel the world. I've been to India, you name it, Singapore, Bangkok, Mumbai, everywhere, and we can't seem to get the big shows to come here because we don't have a commission. We need an athletic combat sports commission with commissioners and inspectors that are all licensed and know what they're doing to make this thing run properly. The revenue that it would generate for Hawaii, not only that, but being able to come and watch your own kid fight, your own local kid fight for a world title here in Hawaii is endless, the money that would generate. We're not asking for any money from anybody. We'll generate our own and run the commission within itself.
My apologies, Mr. Carvalho.
Yes.
2 minutes is up.
Okay,
Can you
okay.
please summarize your testimony?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Yancy 7, individual in support on Zoom.
Not present.
Understood. Are there any other persons here to testify on this measure?
Yancy Medeiros was injured in training last night, so he's in the hospital now getting something done with his knee.
Understood.
He's also competing here in April, so he sent me a message. We have Falanico Vitali.
Okay, would you like to testify? Please go ahead.
Hello, Chair. Hello, members of the committee. I'm submitting in support of SB 1027, adding to what Walter Carvalho is saying. If you guys been to the gyms here, the level of the competition has elevated for the past 20 years. I started fighting in 1998? Today's 2023. We have champions from different organizations that represents Hawaii. The per capita of developing champions in Hawaii is a phenomenal thing, because what I see, the passion for the kids when they train at the gyms nowadays, they love this sport so much that they want to increase, they want to move forward. But what I'm really trying to say is, adding to what Wally was saying, I think it's time for us to put a commission together so we can bring the big shows here and then bring the encouragement of the people back to the state, to the Blaisdell again, or whatever facilities that can handle it. But yeah, I mean, a commission would be super. But thank you for your time. Well,
Thank you. Are there any other persons here to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, we have written testimony in support from Jay Kahe, and that's about it. Okay, members, any questions? Please go ahead, Representative Pure.
This question is for Walter. Thank you for coming, and thank you for helping out our youth by giving an alternative way of doing things.
Thank you.
Good question. Does combative sports ever agitate or facilitate maybe violence in the communities?
So most of the kids that are in martial arts, as you know, martial arts has been around for 1 million years, are very disciplined in the sport. If you're training in a legitimate martial arts academy, discipline is first and foremost is discipline. In my academy, we also do academics too. So it's not just physical fitness and training and combat sports, but we also do academics. So if a school requires 2.0 grade point average, I require 2.5. So we teach discipline. If you get in trouble in school, you're out of the gym. It's real simple. There's a way to control that. You go and watch a dojo, karate school, you'll see how disciplined the kids are. They don't go out and make trouble. It's not those kids that are making the trouble. It's the ones that don't have an avenue to be able to vent and compete in this sport that's out there and available. And like Falanico was saying, Hawaii's been a fighting state for 1 million years. I watched boxing here when I was a kid. I started when I was 13. That's a long time ago. And I used to fly out here and watch the Blaisdell fill up with H.E. Jamawan fighting in an amateur boxing show, and the Blaisdell would be full all the way to the top. We don't even see that anymore because we can't get the big shows to come here. And that's what we're trying to do, is establish legitimacy so that in the world of mixed martial arts, Hawaii is recognized as a legitimate state that can control and handle a martial arts event, a big martial arts event, a world-class martial arts event.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another
Representatives, any further questions? Oh, please continue.
a question for Nadine.
For who?
Nadine.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for submitting testimony. I volunteered for a few years at a detention center. Is any of your submitted comments in relation to combative sports potentially increasing domestic violence in Hawaii, or is not connected?
I don't think our comments were connected to anything in terms of increasing any type of violence in the community. I think our comments were geared towards the fact that we we feel it's unnecessary to pass a measure to establish another commission for combat sports, because we already have under Chapter 440 E, the Mixed Martial Arts Program under the DCCA.
Thank you.
Any further questions, members? Actually, DCCA, if you could stay, I do have a few questions. So, were you able to take time to read the testimony from Mr. Carvalho and his suggestions?
I think I received it just recently.
Okay.
I asked before I came here if I could see what testimony had been submitted. Otherwise, I think we hadn't.
Well, it reads, the DCCA should only be administratively attached to the Combat Sports Commission for the purposes of helping the commission with its accounting needs only. Do you have any comments on that remark?
I don't know if that is something that can be actually done in order for it to be statutorily set up, where DCCA is somehow limited. I think we would still be involved with regard to having an executive officer for the commission, facilitating and conducting any commission meetings. I don't know that there's a way to carve something out that puts some only limited role under the DCCA for a separate commission under
Okay,
the statute.
understood. Are you familiar with how other states run this MMA licensure or regulation?
I have to say I'm apologetically no. I don't.
Okay.
Other than the fact that I understand there was a sunrise analysis done by the state auditor, I guess back in 2007, and from that there was a mixed martial arts program that was passed by the legislature and is reflected in HRS Chapter 440E.
Okay. And under that chapter, according to your testimony, the director is authorized by law to appoint an advisory committee. Has DCCA appointed an advisory committee?
I'll have to check on that to see if there was ever a need for that. But I think that came up in response to, that was in the testimony, in relation to having the necessary expertise, and that's where it was noted that we have the authority, or I have the authority, to appoint an advisory committee if it's a matter of needing a certain amount of expertise to be able to indicate that our licensing processes would make this event appropriate and safe under the state law.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no further questions for DCCA. Thank you. And I would appreciate further information if you could get back to this committee regarding maybe other state regulations with this industry. Actually, I do have a question for Mr. Carvalho.
I was hoping you did.
So in your testimony, written and oral, you noted several concerns over the past few years regarding attracting larger events, MMA events, to Hawaii, and you referenced the issue being the lack of a commission. Do other states have commissions, and if so, are you familiar with how it's regulated?
So I'm very familiar, so I've done my homework on this. I'm licensed in 21 different states and several different countries. I work all over the world. Anybody that knows me will tell you that I work as a cut man at all of these events, but also I advise at some of the different events on different things, like we were in India for 6 months, and we started MMA out there in India. So every commission has its own commissioner, executive commissioner, and their own inspectors that are licensed and trained, which we don't have here right now. And so you cannot have somebody doing drugs or enhancing, wrapping their hands with coins in them or whatever without inspectors. We have one guy here wandering around in the back that doesn't know what he's looking for, and therefore they're not going to come here. You know, they're going to spend a bunch of money, because if you look at the situation that the DCC had set up in this makeshift committee, it's 2% of the gate plus the licensing fee plus the event fee, and it adds up. So now I'm gonna pay all these fees, and you don't even have inspectors and stuff there. Now you want me to pay all the inspectors and all the referees and all the judges and everything on top of that. You're killing all the little shows, and you're pushing the big shows away from Hawaii. And all the funds that are coming in now, by the way, are going into what they call an appropriated fund. What is that? If you spend $500 to have a guy come and inspect the show, one guy, and I pay you $4,000 for the night, where's the rest of the funds go? It should be only for combat sports. So hell, we're trying to raise the next generation of youth athletes here in Hawaii. If we have a fund, a special fund put together for the commission itself, and a kid is qualified to go to the nationals in Tennessee, we send him as a representative of Hawaii. We don't use the money for surfboards and skateboards and whatever. We use it for the Combat Sports Commission, which is how it's supposed to be. And believe me, we don't, we're not looking for any funding. I'll make sure that we generate our own funding within to pay the commission and inspectors that work at these events, because there's money to do that if you keep it within.
Okay, Mr. Carvalho,
Yes.
would you be willing to work with the DCCA with regards to establishing a commission or an advisory committee?
Well, I think the governor is the one that's going to pick the commissioners according to the bill that was passed, right? He would pick, but I would only, the commission has to be made up of people that have experience in the background in this, and the DCCA has none. So they cannot put anybody in there to help if they don't know what they're doing. You're asking questions they can't even answer. They got to go back and study to find out. I'm shooting from the hip. This is not scripted. Ask me anything and I'll tell you.
Thank you, Mr. Carvalho. I don't think I have any further questions. Oh,
Yeah.
please, Representative Amato.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carvalho?
Yes.
I'm wondering, do you have any basic projections on how much revenue combative sports could potentially contribute to our local economy?
Well, you figure the UFC is generating, what, a couple of $1 million at the gate? When the UFC does an event, they're generating anywhere from, I'd say, $5 to $15 million at the gate, right? And that's not including pay-per-view, right? So now, if the UFC were to come here, which we tried when Max Holloway was a world champion, we tried to get him to fight here at Aloha Stadium when it was still in effect, could have generated tons of money, not only for the state, but for the community, for the hotels and the restaurants. And people are not going to come to Hawaii for the UFC just to see the fight on Saturday. They're coming on Monday, like the Pro Bowl, and they're going home on Sunday night, right? And they're generating income, and that's what we were trying so hard to do. Falanico fought in the UFC. Falanico's a former world champion. He's also a football star from right here at UH. I mean, this guy went a long, long ways, and I followed him. We went to the Playboy Mansion and fought. We went all over the world and fought, and never once was he able to fight for a world title in the UFC or a Bellator or a Strikeforce here in Hawaii, because we weren't capable of sustaining that what we needed to have to bring the event here. I'm so passionate about this. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I've been doing this my whole life. A lot of these kids were kids when I started. Now they're grown-ups and they have their own families. This has nothing to do with money for me. It has everything to do with bringing up the next level of athletes to representing Hawaii as a state to be recognized with. We're not recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Carvalho. Ms. Representative Amato, do you have further questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Members, any further questions?
Chair?
Please go ahead, Representative Onishi.
Yes, Director Ando, please.
Oh,
So I'm just curious, because this bill sets out a whole bunch of requirements and stuff like positions and licensure and all of that. Is that within your current Chapter 440E rules or guidelines?
I would have to say, I'm assuming that the reason why there's a bill, and I have to apologize. I mean, the testimony is coming from our department, but there's a particular, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Oh, yes. Thank you.
Hi, Representative. I'm James Kizuski. I am the executive officer for the MMA program. Some of these rules, I mean, there's no carve-outs for a commission, if that's what you're asking currently in the statutes. There's some definitions that are not included as well. So this would be creating a whole new system that we would have to figure out the way to facilitate within our department.
Okay, so, but what the department is saying is that this is not necessary for the health and safety of participants in this sport?
Yes, I mean, I facilitate events now. I'm facilitating a Bellator event next month. I mean, I have had no issues. I mean, there have been claims that there is no experts at these events, but I feel the inspectors that I use at these events are experienced and they do know what they're talking about. There are people in this room who serve as inspectors at these events. And although I don't want to refute his claims, because I'm sure there's I'm sure he feels a certain way, but I do feel that the MMA program as it is now can address MMA events, and it's not an issue of regulation or what the commission can or can't do, but it's rather an issue of the events that are available to large promotions such as the UFC, because Bellator utilizes the Blaisdell Center, and they, I mean, in my opinion, are the second biggest promotion out there. And in my discussions and in my preparation towards these events, they've never expressed any issues related to the venues or related to a lack of a commission in Hawaii.
So, in regards to the people that are involved in the event, referees, physicians, judges, inspectors, etc., do you have guidelines or requirements before they're hired?
Yes, of course. I mean, along with what's outlined in 440, we make sure they are experienced, and along with
Well,
being.
do you have like rules, written rules?
No, there are no HAR in relation to the MMA program.
So it's at your discretion.
Yes, I mean, I use 440E to the best of my ability.
So what happens when you leave? How do we know the next person has the experience or the background to do what you're doing if there's nothing codified in either statute or rules?
I see the issue that you're bringing up, and it is an issue that we can address internally by creating some kind of further evaluation of the applicants. But the way I was trained was using the people before me and using the strategies and what the processes that they use to evaluate candidates.
So we have a boxing commission. Does that fall under DCCA?
Yes, sir.
So would the department consider getting rid of the boxing commission?
I can't speak for the department. I would have to defer.
I mean, it seems logical, right, that if we're not gonna do it for this, then why do we do it for boxing?
Again, I would have to defer. I can't speak to that question.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any further questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll be moving on to SB 1502 SD2 relating to transportation. First to testify on this measure, we have Mana Moriarty, Executive Director of DCCA, in opposition.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members. One small correction. Director Ando is the director of the department. I'm the executive director, under Director Ando of the Office of Consumer Protection. We oppose this bill, and the bill obviously creates an exception from the coverage limits for this new class of vehicles that are used in peer-to-peer car sharing. It's not a new class of vehicles, it's the same vehicles, but it's what they're calling hourly peer-to-peer car sharing. So what does an hourly car sharing program look like? If we look to the bill, hourly means in increments of 1 hour up to 24 hours. Hourly is not constrained to one calendar day. So when I read that, it tells me that I could enter into an agreement with an hourly company to rent a vehicle 1 hour a day for 24 days. I'm not sure exactly how that's different from peer-to-peer car sharing now, as it's regulated under the current law, under the current coverage requirements, which this bill would adjust from $750,000 down to the statutory minimum of $20,000 and $40,000, as you're all aware. We oppose this bill because we believe this exception doesn't aid consumers, and it could create an exception that swallows the rule if other businesses in this space try to follow suit and move into this quote-unquote hourly peer-to-peer car sharing arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Gordon Ito, Insurance Commissioner for DCCA's Insurance Division, with comments.
We stand on our written testimony, offering comments and be available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Evan Owe from the Hawaii Association for Justice in opposition.
Afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Mike Yosua on behalf of the Hawaii Association for Justice. We're in opposition to this bill, well, sections 2 and 3 of the bill, primarily for the same reason as OCP. We feel like it drastically reduces the consumer protection. This bill was just passed last year and went into effect January of this year. So we don't think there's any need to revise this or reduce it. We certainly don't think there's a difference in protections needed for hourly versus daily rentals. Available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Allison Ueoka from the Hawaii Insurers Council in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Allison Ueoka for Hawaii Insurers Council. Like OCP and Hawaii Association for Justice, we mirror those same concerns, and we would also add that if hourly rentals turn over more drivers than durational rental, that actually increases the risk, not decreases it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Davin Aoyagi from Turo with comments.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. I think first and foremost, we need to acknowledge that we do support amending the insurance minimum of $750,000 that was put in place last year for peer-to-peer car sharing. We do believe it needs to be addressed. You know, across the various states, because we have been asked previously, how do other states compare? We are looking at 41 states in the District of Columbia that have peer-to-peer car sharing at state minimums. Beyond those 41 states, 6 additional states have it at 2 to 3 times. Only New York and West Virginia, along with Hawaii, have comparable insurance minimums to Hawaii. And it's important to note that New York just passed its law last year, legalizing peer-to-peer car operations, and West Virginia just transmitted a bill to the governor to lower the $750,000 insurance minimum down to state minimums. Locally, we have provided 5 years of claims information to the insurance division and we don't believe that anything in it demonstrates justification for the higher insurance limits. In fact, the average claim is under $10,000. With that being said, we do oppose the current language in the bill. Current bill creates a disparity in the coverage provided for individuals in identical situations. 2 individuals could be driving the exact same model, make, year, for the same amount of time in the exact same location, and yet the insurance minimums would be vastly different. And we oppose the bifurcation of hourly peer-to-peer car sharing operators. We are in communication with the insurance commissioner about what the language could look like regarding the insurance minimums moving forward. We respectfully request that the committee amend the bill, or consider amending the bill, to eliminate any language referencing hourly peer-to-peer car sharing operators. And if there is language to consider, it could be the House Draft 1 language from HB 640, which was passed by this committee about a couple weeks back. So I'm available for questions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Are there any other persons here to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, any questions?
Chair.
Representative Onishi.
Yes, for DCCA. Yeah, both of you. I actually want to ask both of you. I just wanted clarification. So in your testimony, you are not opposed to Section 1, which regulates parking?
With respect to this bill, I mean, we offered comments. There are concerns. As noted, there's a vehicle, Senate Bill 640, which I would recommend that this bill be deferred, and 640, if the legislature is inclined to keep discussion going, that vehicle be kept.
In terms of the state DOT regulating parking, I think we're all aware that the state has had some issues with airport regulations in the past, and we want to. I'm not sure we can fully understand what the impact of that would be on consumers. If there's an issue to consumers, we'll be concerned about it. But at this point, it's a little early to say, with this new language having been inserted in the bill just in the last draft, exactly what the consequences are going to be for consumers.
Okay, so obviously you don't park on Neighbor Island Airport parking lots.
I do not. I'm here in Honolulu.
Okay. But just to give you some awareness, we have a huge problem at airports parking lots with it being overcrowded and sometimes with peer-to-peer vehicles that are parked there awaiting people coming in to pick up those cars. So just wanted to let you know why it's in there. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any further questions? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to SB 477, SD1, relating to the Public Utilities Commission. First to testify on this measure, we have Dean Nishina, Acting Executive Director of DCCA's Division of Consumer Advocacy, with comments.
Aloha and good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Dean Nishina with the Division of Consumer Advocacy in the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. We stand on our written testimony offering comments, but if I could briefly supplement that written testimony by saying that in many of the transfers of control that come before the Commission, our office tries to identify substantial net benefits to the for customers, and it often takes some time to negotiate those benefits with the utility companies. So again, flexibility in terms of the ability for our office to work to secure those benefits for customers is in the public interest. So again, we would prefer that the measure doesn't move forward, but if it does, we do prefer the version that allows flexibility for the Commission to establish the appropriate time period to review a transaction. Thank you for the opportunity to offer these comments.
Thank you. Next, we have Leo Asuncion, Chair of the Hawaii Public Utilities Commission, with comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Daniel Park here on behalf of the Public Utilities Commission. I stand on the Commission's written testimony and am available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Janine Suki, Senior Manager for Hawaii Telecom, in support on Zoom.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Janine Suki for Hawaiian Telecom. We'll stand on our support testimony for this bill and are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jody Robinson from the Blue Planet Foundation in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Jody Robinson with Blue Planet. I did want to offer a correction. I incorrectly put support. We actually are opposed to this bill. So my mistake, I was doing that too quickly and then I couldn't change it. Blue Planet is a nonprofit organization. We work towards addressing the climate challenge and providing clean energy solutions. We oppose this bill because of our concerns over the intention and necessity of passing this measure to expedite PUC decision-making on mergers and other changes of controls within this specific time phrase proposed, as we believe it may reduce flexibility, restrict due process, and work counter to the public interest. We were a party in the merger docket in 2015 that was contemplating the merger between Hawaii Electric and NextEra. And we note that this decision-making process took 18 months to complete, and we think that the PUC really did need that time to make an informed decision on the docket. And so measures like this to set the intention to restrict that time frame, we're opposed to, and we believe while the changes made in the SD1 are welcome, they don't require this time frame, they just encourage this time frame. I believe that the PUC already does this and tries to expedite decision making. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other persons here to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, any questions? Representative Lowen.
I guess for Janine on Zoom, is this bill proposed by Hawaiian Telecom?
It is not. We do not actually know who requested the bill, but this is not something that we actually requested.
And has there been a past issue where the merger has taken longer than it's felt that it should due to some delays at the commission?
Well, I think our last merger change of ownership took a little bit longer than the 12 months. And what we're suggesting, because unlike some of the other utilities, telecom industry is largely competitive. We were declared fully competitive within the PUC, and that's evidenced by the 200 telecommunication companies that are filed to do business in the state. And so we're just saying that there should be some sort of time frame recommended to maybe take a look at certain other industries that are more competitive and put some time frame around that there, so that there is a little bit more guarantee that in the event of a potential future transfer or transition of ownership, that there are more certainties in place, so that we don't lose employees as the transition occurs.
Were you at Hawaiian Telecom during the last merger?
I was not.
Okay. Were there uncertainties that caused employees to be lost? It seems like everything moved forward at a reasonable pace, so and this bill isn't coming from
it
you,
may
so I'm
have
just trying to
caused,
understand the
I don't know
problem. I'm not done. I was just trying to understand what issue this proposal is growing out of.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your last statement.
When you went through the last merger, when your company went through the last time there was a merger, was there a specific issue that you can name and please provide some concrete details for us that was caused by some delay in the, consideration of the merger application?
I will have to get back to you on those examples. I don't have any right off the top of my head. I would have to confer with my colleagues and get back to you.
Okay, thanks. Consumer advocate? It's okay. Just quickly, I guess with that, we're not hearing from Hawaiian Electric on this, I guess, but for the merger that happened recently with Hawaiian Telecom, was there, in your view, any unnecessary delays in that process, or did it take as long as it needed to take in order to give it proper consideration?
From our perspective, I think the appropriate period was taken to review the transaction. I think that transaction is another example of where we worked with Hawaiian Telecom to identify certain benefits that we ultimately entered a stipulated agreement before the Public Utilities Commission with respect to the delivery of those benefits. And again, it sometimes takes time to negotiate those benefits. We weren't made aware of any situations where employees or vendors may be concerned with the length of time for the transfer. And the company did make us aware that there may be certain covenants that might have been affecting the financing for the transaction, but it's not my understanding that any of those were exceeded.
And then, just out of curiosity, because the comment was made that because it's a more competitive industry, there should somehow be a faster approval, or I'm just trying to understand, because it's still a monopoly operation, why there would be a need for, why there should be less regulatory oversight. What's your take on that statement?
From the perspective of trying to represent consumers' interests, I think there's still a need to ensure that there's adequate review of transaction, even involving Hawaiian Telecom. While the legislature did find that retail telecommunications is fully competitive, there's still certain aspects of the telecommunications industry, such as wholesale provision of services, that still need regulation by the Commission, and to ensure that certain transactions don't result in situations such as concentration of market power that might adversely affect competition. So again, we believe there's still a need for adequate review of transactions, even for telecommunications companies that may be for the incumbent. Certainly for competitive local exchange carriers that don't have their own facilities and maybe serve fewer customers, those type of transfers, they do get approved very quickly. I think I identified a couple examples in my testimony.
Okay. One last question.
Go
for
ahead.
the Public Utilities Commission. and I don't know if you were there at the time, but at the time of the Hawaii and Telcom merger, were you ever made aware of any complaint by their company that things were taking too long?
To my knowledge, that wasn't the case. But I can certainly go back and verify that that was the case.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, members. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll be moving on to SB 1372 SD1 relating to the Executive Office of Aging. First to testify on this measure, we have Carolyn Kadirao, Director of the Executive Office of Aging, in support.
Thank you, Vice Chair Sayama, Chair Nakashima, members of the committee. My name is Caroline Kadirao. I'm the Director of the Executive Office on Aging. We stand in strong support of Senate Bill 1372 SD1 relating to the Executive Office on Aging's Kapuna Care Program. This measure is a clarifying bill that's going to clarify the language of caregiver support services, Kapuna Care services, and respite services in our current Hawaii revised statutes. In 2022, when we combined our Kapuna Care program with our infancy program that we called our Kapuna Caregiver program, when we made that merger, the definitions only provided for employed caregivers, but all caregivers, those in the home and those working, are equally as important and need the services provided under our Kapuna Care program. Again, this is an admin measure. There's no appropriation, and we ask for your support of this bill because if we don't provide access, we're going to have to cut off individuals from this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other persons here to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, any questions? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to SB 602 SD2 relating to health. First to testify on this measure, we have the Department of Health, I believe with comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair Lauren Kim, Planning and Policy Officer for the Department of Health. We submitted very late comments. I'm sorry, but it looks like you have a copy. It was submitted in at least enough time where you have it in front of you. This is a complex issue. The department is in favor of innovative ways that we can expand access to health care. We certainly don't oppose the discussion, and we are actively engaged with the stakeholders to address some of the issues we find in this bill. Since this is a single referral bill, our respectful request is to defer decision-making to give us perhaps another week to work it out. We received a draft from stakeholders that really started out here. We're now here. And just to summarize, some of our concerns are that when we're moving into new territory for clinical care, there are some precautions that we want to take and start low and go slow. Certainly, starting a new stream of healthcare at a retail big box pharmacy, we want to be careful that CLIA-waived tests that may apply to minors are scrutinized. And we also want to make sure that some of the tests that are allowed to be performed by pharmacies with this designation are screening and monitoring in nature, less so diagnostic or at least selective diagnostic tests. Our questions, we're still asking questions about, so you're diagnosed with something, what are you going to do about it? Is there a referral to the primary care physician? Does the big box pharmacy have an electronic medical record? So we certainly do not want to stop the progress of evolving healthcare, but we do want to make sure that there are checks and balances in place. And so giving us a little more time to negotiate with stakeholders is something that we respectfully ask for. Thank you, and I'll be available for questions.
Thank you. Next, we have James Skiewicki, Executive Director of the Board of Pharmacy, in support.
Aloha, Chair and Committee. I'm James Skiewicki, the Executive Officer for the Board of Pharmacy, and I'm here to just stand on our written testimony. I'll be here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Next, we have Mihoko Ito / Tiffany Yajima from Walgreens in support on Zoom.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Mihoko Ito, Sanhai Government Strategies, here today on behalf of Walgreens. Walgreens strongly supports this measure. We believe that the testing that it provides for are things that pharmacists can do and have been doing. These tests are simple and have low risks of erroneous results. And they're tests that you think of like COVID, strep, flu, blood glucose, and others. We would also note that we've been in discussion and stakeholders with stakeholders and have proposed some amendments that would actually narrow the focus of this bill to just certain CLIA waive tests and shorten the list to really the most common ones that would be used, and also included language that the Board of Pharmacy could also expand that list if they would choose to do so. We've also removed or are proposing to remove the language for that would allow pharmacists to perform certain diagnostic lab tests. So the bill has been narrowed significantly with these proposed amendments, and we would ask for the committee to move the measure with those proposed amendments. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Next, we have Annie McBaggle from CVS Health in support.
Aloha, chairs, chair, vice chair, members of the committee. Annie Makapagal on behalf of CVS Health. Just want to stand on our testimony and strong support and available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other persons here to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, we have written testimony and support from the Hawaii Pharmacies Association, University of Hawaii, and several individuals. We have written testimony in opposition from Hawaii Medical Association and Clinical Labs of Hawaii. Members, do we have any questions? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to SB 438 relating to professional and vocational licensing. First to testify on this measure, we have Alani Kyoge, Licensing Administrator for DCCA, in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Alani Kyoki, Licensing Administrator of the Professional and Vocational Licensing Division. Good try. Very good try. Thank you.
I'll get it next time.
No, the division will stand on its written testimony and support. I would just like to highlight that if this bill is passed out, the division will be able to direct its resources to applications requiring active attention and processing and will ultimately result in licensure. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Chelsea Fukunaga, Executive Director of the Board of Nursing, in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chairs, member of the committee. My name is Chelsea Fukunaga, Executive Officer of the Board of Nursing. The board will stand on its written testimony and support. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Seeing none, we'll be taking a short recess for decision making.
Okay, thank you very much. We reconvene the Committee on Consumer Affairs and Commerce, Consumer Protection and Commerce. On our March 16th agenda at 2:30, room 329. Members, for decision-making on Senate Bill 434, Senate Draft 1, related to insurance. Based on the Insurance Commissioner's comments, I'd like to propose that we delete page 6, lines 9 and 10, which seem rather vague, and give the captive insurance industry the opportunity to work with the Commissioner on stronger language. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, as amended.
Voting on SB 434, SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair, Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Amato? Aye. Representative Bellotti? Aye. Representative Hashem? Aye. Representative Hussey Burdick? Aye. Representative Gates?
Aye.
Representative Lowen?
Aye.
Representative Onishi?
Aye.
Representative Tam?
Aye.
Representative Pierre? Aye. Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Members, on SB 855, Senate Draft 1, the recommendation is that on line 9, page 19 to page 10, line 15, that we change the appearance of contribution to assessments and other technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as amended.
Voting on SB 855, SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Knowing the presence of all members, any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Members, on SB 1027, Senate Draft 1, related to combat sports, Chair's recommendation is that we adopt Mr. Caballo's proposed amendments. Other amendments for technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. And in Section 7, effect dated June 30, 3000. Members, questions or comments?
Just a brief comment.
Yes.
So I grew up witnessing one of my relatives, doing something with domestic violence. It brought that person to jail. When I went door to door, some of my constituents were concerned about crime in the district. I volunteered at the Kapolei Juvenile Detention Facility for a couple of years and helped out with youth there, and some of them were detained for violent crimes. I know that combat sports teaches great principles of, self-defense and take care of your community and protection. I'm just concerned that some people might misinterpret this sport, and it could potentially not be best for our community, so I'm going to be voting with reservations.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair, as amended.
Voting on SB 1027, SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Knowing the presence of all members, any members voting no? Representative Pierre voting WR. Any other members voting WR? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, Senate Bill 1502, Senate Draft 2, related to transportation. Chair will defer decision-making on this to Tuesday, March 21st, 2023, in this room. Next, Senate Bill 477, Senate Draft 1, related to the Public Utilities Commission. I would like to incorporate the PUC's comments regarding the completeness of the application and the effect dated to June 30, 3000. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair as amended.
Voting on SB 477, SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Knowing the presence of all members, any members voting no?
No.
No for Representative Lowen. Any other members voting no? Any members voting with reservations for Representative Amato? Any other members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much, members. SB 1372, Senate Draft 1, related to the Executive Office on Aging. Chair's recommendation is to move this as is Members, questions or comments? Okay, Vice Chair, unamended.
Voting on SB 1372 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass as is, noting the presence of all members. Any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Senate Bill 602, Senate Draft 2, relating to health. On this one also, I would like to defer decision-making until Tuesday, March 21st, 2023, in this room, to give the parties time to discuss this matter a little bit more. Sorry. Last, Senate Bill 438, relating to professional and vocational licensing. Chair's recommendation is to pass this unamended. Members, questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair, unamended.
Voting on SB 438, Chair's recommendation is to pass as is, noting the presence of all members. Any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? Thank you, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. We are adjourned.